The knock was soft. 3 taps. I almost didn't hear it over the wind. When I opened the door, there he was. Soaked, older, silent, but unmistakably him. The same man who'd pulled me from the river all those years ago. He hadn't aged so much as weathered, like something carved by time, not years. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. In his outstretched hand was a rusted military medal. My father's. The one we thought had washed away the night everything else did. My breath caught. Where did you get this? I asked, my voice already breaking. He just nodded, eyes steady, then turned to go. I stepped barefoot into the rain. Wait, but to understand how we got to this moment, we need to go back to the beginning. People in town knew me by habit, not by name. The waitress at Mary's diner poured my coffee before I asked. The guy at the hardware store always said, "See you tomorrow," even if I didn't come back for weeks. I lived on the edge of a small river town, the kind where everyone smiles, waves, and keeps to themselves, especially when it comes to grief. I was one of the invisible ones, a maintenance worker for the county. Fixed lights, cleared gutters, patched sidewalks. Most days I just watched things break again. My trailer sat on a rise above the bend where the river curved east. On quiet nights, I'd sit out back with a thermos and watch the water move. I used to do that with my father. He was Army, Bronze Star, quiet man. When he passed, I never touched his medals. My mother kept them in a carved box, the kind you don't open without a reason. After she died, the box disappeared during the clean-out. My sister swore she packed it. I didn't argue. Grief doesn't need blame. It just needs space. That winter had been long and strange. Snow came late. Rain came early. By March, the ground was so wet the dogs walked funny on it. Everyone said the river would flood, but everyone says that every year. I'd been keeping to myself more than usual. The old truck needed work. So did my back. Some days I'd sit on a bucket in the garage, pretending to sort bolts, really just listening to the radio. There was talk of storms, wind, evacuation routes. Still, no one left. Not yet. I wasn't married. Never had been. There was someone once, a long time ago, but she wanted light, and I carried too much shadow. So I let her go before I could dim her completely. I don't say that for sympathy, just so you understand. When the night came, the night the river rose, I wasn't anyone's first call, not even their third. The week before the flood, I helped an old man fix a fence. He didn't ask. I just saw him struggling and lent a hand. We didn't exchange names, just worked in silence. That's the kind of place this is. You help because you're able, not because you're asked. That fence stood for 3 days before the river swallowed it. I had one photo on my fridge, my dad in uniform, standing in front of a Humvee, squinting into the sun. I looked at it the night the rain started to fall in sheets. Something in the wind felt off, not loud, but low, like a rumble buried in the belly of the earth. I stepped outside. The sky looked bruised. Trees leaned the wrong way. I remember thinking, it's coming. Not fear, not panic, just that quiet sentence. It's coming. In the town center, the creek that cut through the park had already jumped its banks. Water licked the base of stop signs. Sirens moaned in the distance. The diner was dark, power gone. And then I saw her. A little girl, maybe 10, maybe 12, standing alone by the edge of the playground, holding something. I couldn't tell what. She was soaked to the bone. She wasn't moving. That's when I stepped forward. Not as a hero, not even as a man with a plan. Just someone who'd been broken enough to recognize fear in someone else's silence. End of chapter 1. The first thing I noticed was the smell, damp earth and gasoline. The town hadn't officially evacuated yet, but the road down to the park was already blocked. I parked the truck sideways to keep the water from pulling it forward and waded in. The current wasn't strong, yet, but it was fast, and it was climbing. That girl stood frozen by the swing set, mud creeping over her shoes. She clutched a small box to her chest, wooden, maybe 6 inches wide. For a second I thought, she's holding a lunchbox. But then I saw the shape carved into the lid. It was my father's box, the one with his medals. My boots sank into the soft ground. A siren howled somewhere behind me, fading fast. She didn't run, just stared at me like she knew me, or had been waiting. I reached her just as the water reached her knees. She didn't speak, neither did I. I held out my arms, slow, open, not pushing. She hesitated, then stepped forward. The current caught her legs and nearly took her down, but I was already pulling her in, tucking her against my side, lifting her as best I could. I wasn't strong, not anymore. My back screamed, but I didn't let go. Not of her, not of the box. We moved like that, slow, half dragging, half wading, until we reached the service stairs behind the old post office. The girl clung to my flannel shirt, face buried near my collarbone. I couldn't feel my legs, just weight and water, and the sound of things breaking all around us. There was a moment, halfway up those stairs, when I thought, if I go down, she goes too. So I locked my jaw and said, out loud for no one, not today. We reached the 3rd floor just as the lights cut out completely. The emergency generator buzzed once, then died. Rain lashed the windows like it was trying to get inside. I found a dry corner near the filing cabinets and sat down with her on my lap, the box between us. Still, she hadn't said a word. I peeled off my jacket and wrapped it around her, even though my hands were shaking. Your name? I asked softly. She looked up. Her eyes were pale, like misted glass. I was supposed to give this to someone, she whispered. To who? She hesitated, then blinked once. To you. I couldn't respond. Not then. My brain wanted facts, but something deeper, older, was already unraveling. The metal box had vanished 10 years ago. The girl wasn't even born when my mother died. And yet, there it was, in her arms, real as the rising water. By morning, the worst had passed. The sun came out like it had nothing to apologize for. Rescue boats moved through the streets. People with blankets, clipboards, questions. I handed her over to the medics, told them where we'd come from, gave them my name, but not hers, because she was gone. In the crowd, between blinks, she slipped away, like a leaf carried by the current. And when I checked my pockets later, the metal box was gone too, as if none of it had happened. I never found her name. The reports listed no missing girls. No one claimed to know her. No one remembered seeing her. Even the rescue teams shrugged. Could have been the shock. One EMT said, "You were hypothermic. Memory plays tricks." But I knew what I saw. I knew what I held. Back at home, I sat for hours by the waterline, watching the river drag debris downstream. My soaked boots sat on the porch for 3 days before I threw them out. And that corner of the filing cabinet where we sat, I went back weeks later. Scratched into the metal, barely visible, was a name. Marlena. I didn't return to work for weeks. No one asked why. At the county office, they just nodded when I walked in and handed me a new schedule. They thought I'd been injured. I let them think that. I didn't have language for what had actually happened. How do you say? A girl gave me my father's medal during a flood, then vanished like fog. You don't. You go back to work. You fix light poles and clear gutters and nod at people in the diner who don't remember your name. You fold your wet clothes and hang them in the garage. You pretend your boots didn't rot from river silt. You pretend the box never existed. But I kept thinking about her. Marlena. I said the name under my breath sometimes. Like a prayer. Like a mistake I didn't want to stop making. I searched for her in every child's face. Asked around at shelters, churches, schools. Missing during the flood? I'd ask, casual. Blank stares, shakes of the head. One woman said, "We were lucky. No kids lost that night." I didn't correct her. A month later, I went back to the post office, just to see. The door to the 3rd floor had been locked and sealed since the flood. Official damage assessment. Unsafe to enter. But the building manager let me in, out of some shared trauma. Said, "Don't touch anything." I nodded. I climbed the stairs with a flashlight. The corner where we'd sat still smelled like river mold and rusted metal. The filing cabinet was tilted, swollen at the base, and on its surface, faint but there, I saw it again. Marlena, carved with something small, a key maybe, a nail. Below it, the outline of a medal. I pressed my hand to the metal and closed my eyes. For a second, I remembered the weight of her, soaked, shaking, against my chest, her breath, the silence between us. When I told my sister about it, she said, "You always held on too tight to Dad's stuff. Maybe this is just how you're letting go." But it didn't feel like letting go. It felt like something unfinished, something buried deep beneath floodwater, still breathing. I stopped sleeping well. Every time the rain came, I'd jolt awake. Sometimes I'd hear knocking in my dreams. 3 taps, soft. Once, I opened the door in a dream, and my father stood there. Not young, not smiling, just standing. Behind him, the girl held the box. When I woke, my hands were cold. My eyes were wet. I began to keep a journal. Just 1 sentence each night. Day 31. Still no word. Still remember her voice. Day 45. Searched the county library for storm records. Nothing unusual. No child listed. No box logged is found. Day 72. Maybe it wasn't real, but then why do I feel lighter and heavier at the same time? Day 90. What if the river didn't take her? What if she was sent? That last line scared me, because it didn't sound like me. Seasons changed. The river receded. Trees bloomed and dried and bloomed again. I carried on. Quiet. Routine. Coffee at Mary's. Bolts in the garage. The hum of old music in the background of every moment. But something had shifted. I had been anonymous once. But now, I was haunted. Not by ghosts, by gratitude, by the ache of an unfinished sentence. 5 years passed. The town rebuilt in layers. Asphalt, siding, fences. A new park rose where the old one was swept away. The swing set was gone. In its place, a stone bench with no plaque. I avoided that part of town. Until one spring morning, I didn't. I was on a county call, fixing a broken lamppost by the riverside. It had been knocked askew by a delivery truck, but as I knelt with my wrench, something caught my eye. On the bench, a girl, maybe 16 now, sat with a notebook on her lap. She wasn't crying, just still, like someone waiting again. And in her lap, there was a familiar box, smaller than I remembered, but I knew it. I knew the carvings, the tiny eagle emblem on the corner. My heart thudded. I stood. She looked up, not startled, almost prepared. "You're him," she said. I didn't answer. I couldn't. "My name's Marlena," she added softly. "You saved me when I was 10. The world narrowed to that moment. Wind through trees, far-off hum of a boat engine, and the way her voice didn't tremble. "I don't know why I disappeared after that," she said. "I don't even remember where I went. There are months missing. My foster family says I showed up at a shelter a week after the flood. No memory, just this box." She opened it, gently, reverently. Inside was the medal, bronze star, still scarred with river silt, still mine. "I kept it," she said, "because I thought maybe one day I'd understand." Her eyes locked on mine. "And then last week, I had this dream. The river, the cold, your voice. 3 words. Not today." I nodded. "I've said that before," I murmured. She smiled. "So did my dad, before he died. It was our phrase." I sat on the edge of the bench, unsure what to do with my hands. Marlena offered the box. "I think this is yours." I hesitated. "I'm not sure anymore," I said. "Maybe it always belonged to you." She tilted her head. "But it was your father's. Maybe that's why it found its way to someone who needed it more." Silence. Then, "I want to remember everything," she whispered. "What happened, how I got out, why I had it, why you were there." I looked out at the river. "You don't have to remember," I said. "Sometimes it's enough to carry the weight forward. Make it mean something." She didn't argue, just placed the box between us, and we sat like that. 2 names written by the same storm, separated by silence, rejoined by something heavier than fate. Later that year I got a letter. Typed, neat, no return address. "I joined a volunteer group for flood recovery. Just wanted you to know. Every time we hand someone a blanket or lift someone off a roof, I hear the water and remember your arms. I still don't remember your name, but I know your kindness. Thank you, Marlena." I folded the letter and placed it in my father's box. I hadn't kept much else. Just that, and the river. Always the river. It happened in early fall, the kind of afternoon where the light turns gold for no reason at all. I was fixing the steps out front when I heard it. 3 knocks. Soft. Measured. I froze. My hands, dirty from the railings, curled into my palms. I stood slowly, brushed off my jeans, and opened the door. He was there. A man in his early 40s, maybe older, standing barefoot on my porch with mud on his jeans and a duffel over his shoulder. He held nothing but a small envelope and something clenched in his fist. He looked at me like he'd been walking for days. "You don't know me," he said, "but I think I've been carrying something that belongs to you." He opened his hand. The medal. My father's. The exact one I'd seen in Marlena's box. But this one was clean, polished, the ribbon restored. "Where did you get that?" I asked. His voice cracked. "From my daughter. Years ago. She didn't know where it came from. She always kept it near." "Your daughter? Marlena?" I stepped back. My chest tightened in a way I hadn't felt in years. Not from fear, but from some sudden, overwhelming alignment. Like the final puzzle piece was being pressed into place. He nodded. "I was in prison when she was born. Her mother never told me. I only found her 2 years ago. She told me about the flood. About you." He held out the envelope. Inside was a photo. A grainy one from an old disposable camera. A man, me, carrying a little girl through waist-high water. My jaw slack, my flannel soaked. Her arms locked around my neck. I had never seen the picture before. "I think someone in the rescue crew took it," he said. "Marlena found it online last year. Sent it to me when I got out." I couldn't speak, just stared at the image. My body, her face, the flood behind us. "You saved her," he said. "And then she saved me." I looked up. He was still holding the medal. "I came to return this, not because she asked, because I finally understood what it meant." I reached for it, not quickly but carefully, like something sacred. The weight of it surprised me, heavier than I remembered. Or maybe I was just older. "You sure?" I asked. He smiled faintly. "She said it belonged to a man who never asked to be remembered, but couldn't be forgotten." I invited him in. We didn't talk much, just sat in the kitchen, mugs between us. Rain tapped against the window like fingers. He told me a bit about Marlena, that she lived upstate now, that she worked disaster relief, mostly floods, that she had a dog named River and a quiet sense of humor. "She still doesn't remember that whole year," he added. I nodded. Some things aren't meant to be remembered, just felt. When he left, he shook my hand with both of his. "Thank you," he said. I nodded. "Not today," I replied. His eyes widened. "That's what she used to say." After he disappeared down the road, I placed the medal back in the box. This time, I locked it, and beside it, I placed the photo. Not because I needed proof, but because one day, someone else might. The photo stayed in the box. I didn't frame it, didn't scan it, didn't show it to anyone. It wasn't proof. It was memory, and memory doesn't always want to be displayed. Sometimes it just wants to rest somewhere quiet. I kept the box under the floorboard beside my bed, just like my mother once did, maybe for the same reasons. And some nights, especially when the sky rumbled low and heavy, I'd pull it out and run my hand along the carved lid, not to remember, to feel remembered. I never told my sister. I never wrote it down. I tried once, typed a few sentences into an old Word document. The river took everything, then it returned something I didn't know I still needed. But the rest came out wrong. Too heavy, too poetic. So I deleted it. Not because it wasn't true, because it wasn't mine to tell. I started walking more, down by the banks, through the rebuilt park. One day, I saw a little girl playing near the water's edge, chasing a paper boat with her fingers. Her mom watched nervously from a bench nearby. I stopped. Not close, just enough to make sure she was okay. She looked up and waved at me. No fear, just curiosity. "Want to race me?" she called out. I smiled and shook my head. "Nah, you'd win." She grinned, turned, and let her boat go. It floated, spun, and caught a current, disappearing beyond the bend. Later that night, I folded a piece of notepaper into the same shape, set it gently in the river, watched it go, and whispered, "Thank you." To who? I don't know. To the water, to Marlena, to the quiet part of the world that still sees people like me. I began writing again. Not the story, but letters. Not to send. Just to say things that had lived unsaid inside me for too long. To my father. "I understand now why you kept it all locked away. Why you didn't talk about the things that mattered. They weren't meant for the world. They were meant to live quietly inside the people you touched." To Marlena. "You were never mine to save. I think maybe we saved each other." To myself. "You did good. Even if no one saw it, you did good." One morning, I walked to the river and sat on the old bench. In the space where her name had once been carved into metal, I saw a fresh etching, faint, delicate. Just one word, still. No name, no date, but I knew. Marlena had been back. I didn't cry, Just closed my eyes and breathed in the river. It didn't speak, but it didn't have to. It had already said everything. It was a new boy this time. Maybe 19, maybe 20. Buzzed hair, broad shoulders. Wore his emotions close to the surface like his coat didn't quite fit right. He worked maintenance for the county, my old job. We crossed paths at the river when he was patching a broken bench slat, same one I used to sit on. He was struggling with the drill, the screw slipping. "Need a second hand?" I asked. He looked up, sheepish. "Wouldn't mind." I knelt beside him, guided his grip, showed him how to angle the bit without splitting the wood. He nodded. "You used to do this, right? Before me?" I smiled. "Something like that." When we finished, he sat down and sighed, the way young people do when they don't know they're allowed to be tired. Then he pulled out a folded paper from his pocket. "I found this behind the filing cabinet in the old post office. Thought maybe it was trash, but..." He handed it to me. It was one of the letters I'd written. To myself. "You did good. Even if no one saw it, you did good." I blinked hard. "You wrote it?" he asked. I nodded. He looked down at his hands. "I don't really have anyone who says that kind of stuff. That I did good. Ever." We sat in silence. Birds moved through the trees like whispers. Then he asked, "Do you ever think maybe the river remembers people too? Not just what it takes, but who stood still and didn't run?" I didn't know what to say, so I just put a hand on his shoulder. Sometimes that's all a man needs. That night, I found another old notepad and started writing again. Not for me this time. For someone else, whoever might stumble across it next. Whoever needed to read something that helped them stand a little taller, walk a little further. I titled it, "For the Ones Who Stayed Behind." Inside were pages of quiet things. You matter, even if no one says it out loud. Courage doesn't always look like fire. Sometimes it looks like mud on your jeans and a voice that says, "Not today." People forget faces, but not the feeling of being lifted. I wrapped the notebook in plastic, sealed it with tape, and left it in the same spot behind the cabinet on the 3rd floor of the post office, just in case. Weeks later, I walked by the river again. The wind had shifted, colder now, leaves like fire across the water. I passed the bench. The slat we fixed was still holding. On it, someone had scratched one word, carefully, quietly. "Enough." I paused, sat, and smiled. Yes, it was. It's been years now. The river still runs. The town's quieter than it used to be, or maybe I just listen differently. Every now and then, someone knocks on my door asking about the flood. College kids, local writers, volunteers gathering stories from the survivors. I always say the same thing. I was just there. They ask if I knew anyone who saved people that night. I nod, but I don't give names. I describe moments. A girl holding a box, a carved word in steel, a man with a medal in his fist. Sometimes I see the hunger for a name but not everything. Marlena wrote one more. I work with kids after floods, ones who've lost hope. One of them found a medal in the mud. I told her, sometimes they return to... But she held that medal like it meant something, and I realized, maybe that's enough. She didn't sign it, but she didn't have to. I've started marking time differently, not by birthdays or seasons, but by returns. The photo returned. The man returned. The name returned. The weight returned. The story returned. One night, during a late spring thunderstorm, I sat by the window, watching the rain track down the glass in crooked rivers. Something in the wind made me stand. I opened the door. No one was there, but on the porch, folded into a perfect triangle, was a clean piece of paper. Inside, "You may never know what you did for me, but I remember. Thank you, M." I lit a candle, placed the note inside the box with the medal and the photo, closed the lid, and whispered, "Some names never leave the heart." Love this story? Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more. Don't forget to check out the video currently on your screen. You won't want to miss it. See you in the next one.